extra level of vigilance and pay attention to any suspicious device.
The Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, fired.
It just seemed mean-spirited.
It was a horrible day for democracy.
Oh, Andy McCabe has undercut his credibility all by himself. It was his own fellow FBI agents that said he leaked and then lied about it.
You know, his firing may be justified. There's no way for us to know at this point.
The media was up in arms over the weekend saying, is Robert Mueller next? And the president's attorney, Ty Cobb, he said that the president is not considering or discussing the firing of special counsel Robert Mueller.
They got to get the last shot. Paul gets the bounce, and that is it. Nevada pulls off a miracle.
Live from New York City, this is Fox and Friends for the, let's see, it's the 19th day of March. We are just a couple of days away from spring, even though there's a possibility of snow tomorrow here in New York City.
I know.
Now, do you think there's a chance that Janice is making this up?
Janice, so far,
She's screaming no.
Every nor'easter. She's nailing it.
She's trying. I know. I'll get on a lot if I could just say, just on the eve of spring, there's going to be 3 snowstorms in a row.
So you think she's forecasting these things for FaceTime?
Can one be skeptical? Can we just?
Well,
I need an
crazy.
explanation.
She's not lying. It's going to be cold. Just know it's going to be cold.
All right,
that's right.
Don't
All
put
right.
away that warm coat yet.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the news. Were you watching? Let's see. It was about 2 minutes before 9 o'clock on Friday night when it was announced that the Attorney General of the United States had fired that man right there, Andrew McCabe. It's interesting. Adam Housley had a report over the weekend where apparently Mr. McCabe threatened to take people down with him if he was fired. Adam said he had apparently the Inspector General has tons of stuff on him. And that's one of the reasons why the president was tweeting about Mr. McCabe. He was tweeting about Mr. Comey. He was tweeting as well about Mr. Mueller over the weekend, saying, look, why has he stacked his team with a bunch of Democrats, no Republicans? Essentially, the president was saying, hey, I don't want Mueller fired, but you got to wrap this thing up because there's no collusion so far.
Oh, well, the left went crazy with that. They said over the weekend that Mueller, who's investigating the president, now the president's going to fire him. The president said that is not true at all. In fact, his attorney, Ty Cobb, said this in response to media. Can we roll it up, please? In response to media speculation and related questions being posed to the administration, the White House yet again confirms that the president is not considering or discussing the firing of special counsel Robert Mueller.
And it's
pretty
important,
clear.
and it's important to point out, because people are not reporting this accurately, that Andrew McCabe was not fired by Donald Trump. The recommendation went to the Attorney General, who decided to pull the trigger Friday, yes, 2 days before he was about to retire. But remember, Chris Wray, who stood up to the president recently, the FBI director, was the one who pulled him off the case. As soon as he saw the IG report, he said, you know what? I'm pulling you out. Just finish out the string until you retire. Yeah. Well, the IG report comes out, and the office of...
It's not out yet.
Right. Well, the IG report has already looked at some things that McCabe has done that got Chris Wray's attention and had him pull him back. But now the Office of Professional Responsibility recommends that he be fired for a lack of candor. So it's hard to defend McCabe's behavior, and don't get locked into this is President Trump trying to get rid of the FBI investigation, because Andrew McCabe would have you think that. Because Andrew McCabe went right at the president, and the president went right back at him. If he had laid out, it would have made people report it accurately. This wasn't coming from President Trump, who clearly wasn't happy with McCabe.
Right, and he
but that's
tweeted
besides
that out.
the point.
The president had tweeted that out earlier. You know, what's McCabe doing?
Yeah, well,
that kind of stuff.
McCabe got fired for his own wrongdoing, and Trey Gowdy even came out and said he has no one else to blame but himself. He got fired for leaking information to the media and misleading congressional investigators, not telling them the whole truth. Now, he said on Friday, he said the OIG investigation has focused on information I chose to share with a reporter through my public affairs officer and a legal counselor. As deputy director, I was one of only a few people who had the authority to do that. It was not a secret. It took place over several days, and others, including the director, that would be Comey, were aware of the interaction with the reporter. I emphasize that because Comey, under oath, said he was not aware. He did not authorize. Listen to this.
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Question 2 on relatively related. Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
Well, that would appear to be somebody's not telling the truth. The question is who? And then I go back to the first thing that I had reported that Adam Housley had said. Andrew McCabe said he threatened to take people down with him if he was fired. Did he just spill the beans on the director? We don't know, but Jonathan Turley, who was on with Brian about an hour ago, say, look, Comey has some problems too.
Now, we already know that Comey is a leaker. The question is he a serial leaker? Because we know that after he was fired, he removed his memos, which, by the way, I believe were FBI material, at least 7 of them, and gave them to a friend at Columbia Law School, some of which, or at least the information, was leaked to the media. This is an even more serious allegation because it would be occurring when he was director. And it will raise questions of whether Comey is not just a leaker, but a liar.
You know, Chris Christie, who's now with ABC, reported yesterday, he said, listen, I'm friends with James Comey, I like him. But when Robert Mueller was running the FBI, you never got any leaks for 12 years. And then when James Comey comes over, it's leak central, and this continuing. So there's a little bit of a problem here, especially when he admitted to that he's leaked to the Columbia professor.
Right, exactly.
Well, here's the thing. Washington, D.C. leaks all the time. But there's a difference. There is an authorized leak and there's an unauthorized leak. Charles Grassley, the senator from Iowa, was very specific in asking the former director, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in a news report? It looks like the answer would be yes, but he said no. And then you've got James Kallstrom, who had been the FBI assistant director for a number of years. He says ultimately, and I'm going to paraphrase, kind of the deep state trying to protect Hillary Clinton if she were indicted over that email thing before the election. Remember?
I think we have ample facts revealed to us during this last year and a half that high-ranking people throughout the government, not just the FBI, high-ranking people had a plot to not have Hillary Clinton, indicted so that she could remain the flawed candidate that she was, which in my view was stupidity. And they also had and even the Strzok guy talked about this. They had a backup plan to basically frame Donald Trump. Right. And that's what's been going on. This whole thing, in my view, is just total phony.
That's why if the president could lay out just a little bit, as Carl Rove pointed out over the weekend, the IG report is about to come out in about a month, middle of April perhaps, that make Hillary and her people look terrible, people covering for her perhaps, if the early indications are true. Plus, the Andy McCabe firing backs up what the president always thought. The independent report by lifetime appointees are the ones who came up with this review of Andy McCabe, which backs up what the president was saying. So if he could pull back and let this process come out, it would actually back up his story. But when he comes forward, he allows his enemies to use him as a distraction.
All right, we had Dan Bongino on about 30 minutes ago, and he said he was calling out the FBI hypocrisy over the Hillary Clinton probe. Listen to this.
Let's talk about a corrupted process, though, for a moment here. Andy McCabe's the number 2 in charge of the FBI during the process when they were investigating Hillary Clinton, and they wrote an exoneration letter for Hillary Clinton before they'd even interviewed her, number 1. Number 2, the FISA court process, a secret court, has an information verification procedure known as the Woods procedure. Where was that? You introduced fake information into the FISA court while you were the number 2 at the FBI. Listen, spare us the crocodile tears about a corrupted process, Andy. Sorry.
So let's just hope that when the Inspector General report does come out, keep in mind he only has the purview of the Department of Justice. He can't go and call in people from the Department of State or any place else who's the left's government. But let's hope there are enough people at the FBI and the Department of Justice talking to Inspector General Horowitz. They can put the pieces together. And if that leads to another special prosecutor, So be it.
The investigation or the report's going to come out this month or next month, they're telling us.
Senator Lindsey Graham wants to have a hearing, have Jeff Sessions come out and explain why he fired him. So this probably has another dramatic page. But at 10 minutes after the hour, Jillian Mealy's been following what's happening in Texas as we found another bomb.
A lot of people waking up on edge, still on edge, as they have been for weeks now. So let's get you caught up on that, starting with this Fox News alert. A fourth explosion in a month rocks Austin, Texas. 2 men rushed to the hospital after roadside bombs went off, possibly detonated by a tripwire. They're not ruling out a connection to a series of package bombs in the city. This latest blast coming just hours after police urged the bomber to surrender. They're now offering a $115,000 reward for information. Police believe the attacks may be racially motivated. More on that in a live report later in this hour, so make sure you stay tuned for the latest. This morning, students at Florida International University will return to class for the first time since the catastrophic bridge collapse. The school will hold a moment of silence at 1:47 p.m., the exact time of Thursday's incident in Miami. And we know the identities of all 6 people killed in the collapse. You can see their faces on your screen. That includes a father of 3 and a student at FIU. The first lawsuit on behalf of an injured victim is expected to be filed today. Congress back to work today with just 5 days left to avoid a third government shutdown this year. They will try to hammer out a more than $1 trillion spending bill that would fund the government for the rest of the 2018 fiscal year. We're expected to see details of that bill later today. The House is aiming to vote on it Wednesday. Russian President Vladimir Putin easily winning his 4th term in office. Final results showing Putin with nearly 80% of the vote. Video now surfacing from several polling locations appearing to show election workers stuffing the ballot boxes. Putin will be in power for at least 6 more years. Let's look at your headlines. Send it back to you.
I love there's no controversy there. We just caught you stuffing the ballot box. Sounds good.
But you're not allowed to call him out on it.
Let's do an investigation on that.
Wait, he only got 75% of the vote?
What's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, does he have any people run against him?
Yeah, well,
would you?
I would never know.
Evidently, the person that ran against him just ran ads for steakhouses. Didn't even run ads anti-Putin. That's the way not to get killed.
If it works.
All right, they'll jail everybody else. Sad but true. Meanwhile, President Trump set to unveil his plan to battle the opioid crisis. He's going to do that today. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar will be with him. Before that, he's going to talk to us. That's next.
Plus, millions of people all over the country live with MS, including our own Janice Dean. And she is opening up about her battle with the disease and her brand new treatment. There she is with her husband, Sean. Coming up is Janice's story.
Always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometimes I'm gonna have to lose.
Opioid overdose deaths have nearly quadrupled since 1999. This is a total epidemic. It's time to liberate our communities from this scourge of drug addiction. We have to go after the drug companies. We have to. We have no choice. If we catch a drug dealer, death penalty.
Interesting. Well, today, President Trump is going to unveil his plan to battle the opioid crisis, including harsher penalties for dealers. The president will visit Manchester, New Hampshire, one of the hardest hit states by the opioid epidemic. Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar will be joining the president today. He joins us right now from our nation's capital with a preview of what we can expect. Mr. Secretary, good morning to you.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning.
The president has made it very clear this is a national health emergency. What's he going to unveil today?
So the president today is laying out very bold actions and historic goals to stop this crisis dead in its tracks. So he is saying that within 3 years, we will reduce the prescribing of legal opioids by 1/3. And within 5 years, all federal health care reimbursement programs and all federal health care providers will follow the best evidence-based use of legal opioids. So he's got a 3-point plan. He's going to prevent addiction from these legal opioids. He's going to reduce the supply of illicit drugs coming into this country. And he's going to ensure that we've got great treatment for those who are struggling with addiction from opioids.
Mr. Secretary, we heard the president, it was a couple of weeks ago in Pennsylvania at that rally, he mentioned the possibility of perhaps death penalty for some dealers in some cases.
I think this shows the seriousness with which President Trump and we take this crisis, meaning that if you're involved in the distribution of illicit drugs, or if you are improperly using, selling, distributing even legal opioids, there should be serious penalties attached and serious enforcement attached to all of that.
Let's talk a little bit about the overprescription of the opioids, because let's face it, here in the United States, we all go to the doctors when we don't feel good, and sometimes we demand some pills, whether it's amoxicillin or a painkiller. What sort of responsibility will America's doctors have going forward? You just said that you're going to try to cut the prescription rate by 1/3 over the next 3 years. How are you going to do that?
So, Steve, you're right, and you're actually pointing to a very similar situation, which is the overuse of antibiotics. And as the same way that we were able to get that more under control, we intend to go after the overprescribing of legal opioid prescriptions. So we've got to retrain our doctors. You know, our doctors were trained to deal with pain, but there are alternative ways to deal with pain, including non-opioid treatments that we can put patients on. We're doing research and development in additional alternative pain management tactics. We've got to reduce the number of opioid pills that individuals get, even if it's appropriate for someone to get an opioid prescription for, say, a wisdom tooth or knee surgery. We've got to reduce how many they get. We've got to take back extra drugs. They shouldn't be sitting in your medicine cabinet. Get them out of there so your kids or you are not tempted to use them.
Well, it is a national health emergency, and we hope help is on the way. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, we thank you very much. Have a great day up in New Hampshire.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. All right. 7:20 now here in New York City. California is proud to be a sanctuary state. We've told you about that. But one small city in the Golden State wants out of that sanctuary business. A big vote happening there today. We're going to tell you all about it. Plus, former CIA Director John Brennan calling President Trump a disgraced demagogue for firing Andrew McCabe, who apparently lied. Has the intel community become too politicized? A debate is next.
Higher loyalty, truth, lies, and leadership isn't out until April 17th. And finally, $3. That's how much a Chick-fil-A employee returned to a customer a month after he left it at a drive-thru. The cashier in Lubbock, Texas, brought the change with him to work every single day, waiting for that customer to come back. He says thinking of others is part of the job description. That was nice. All right, Brian, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ainsley. Former CIA Director John Brennan going on an anti-Trump tirade this weekend over Andrew McCabe's firing, calling President Trump, quote, a disgraced demagogue. And he went on, when the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. You may scapegoat Andy McCabe, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you. But does this just reinforce the president's concern of a politicized intelligence community, especially the previous one that had it out for him? Let's debate it. Buck Sexton's here. He was in the CIA, got a great radio show. And former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and President of the Washington Strategy Group, Joel Rubin. Buck, does this sound like something the former CIA director should be tweeting?
He's certainly allowed to, but it plays right into a bigger narrative, Brian, of a whole anti-Trump cabal at the top of the intelligence community during the Obama years, or at the very end of the Obama years. And I think that what we see time and again here is that there are people, whether it's Brennan, McCabe, Clapper, Comey, who are so clearly anti-Trump in their proclivities, and it looks like some of them were taking very clear anti-Trump action during the campaign as well. So for people who say things like there is no deep state or there is no swamp, I have to wonder, at what point can we agree that this is well beyond a coincidence? And when you have the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations essentially saying on Twitter, this is Samantha Power, people better watch out because Brennan might be upset. That definitely sounds like the deep state's going to strike back.
Yeah, she tried to explain herself, but here's the exact tweet. Not a good idea to blank off John Brennan. Then she tried to explain it. Well, what is he going to do? Use some levers of power? Joe Rubin. Also, Brennan got it wrong. It was not President Trump that fired McCabe. That was an internal review.
It was an internal review, but let's take a step back here and really be clear. President Trump has been attacking and criticizing the American intelligence community, the people who are responsible for keeping us safe since he came into office. This is part of a trend. It's been ongoing for over a year, and one has to ask, why is he consistently doing this, consistently attacking the people who in the FBI support law enforcement around the country, who keep terrorists at bay, who attack drug rings? It's a really demoralizing attack, and it's essentially undermining our ability to stay safe.
Joel, is it wrong if you feel targeted by the higher-ups in the intelligence community to attack back? Or should you just sit there like a pincushion and say, I guess I'll be railroaded right out of office?
Well, we have to remember here, the president is attacking individuals in positions who have responsibility for protecting the nation. And there's an ongoing investigation led by Robert Mueller. He was a Republican appointee under President Bush, who I also served under as a career officer. And we need to let these investigations play out. Right. Attacking law enforcement officials by name definitely sends signals about the attacker more than the attack.
But he's attacking political appointees by name. These are people.
All of them.
These are people. Well, no, I think this is a very important distinction.
Let him finish.
President Trump is not at war with the rank and file of the FBI or the CIA. Some people who used to run those organizations, I think, have a vested interest in trying to convince the American people that's what's going on. But it's just false. And I think that anyone who spends time around the rank and file, particularly the FBI and the agency, know that there are plenty of people that think that Trump is actually doing a great job. But his focus is on those who had levers of power during the primary, during the general election campaign, and seem to be abusing them to stop him from being president.
And Joel, I was siding with you too, that I think the president should let the Robert Mueller probe play out, but he has every right to fight back and defend himself, especially if nobody else will. And if you go on the streets and talk to cops, they feel as though the president does have their back. I think you'll agree with me on that. Joel and Buck, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, straight ahead, a Fox News alert in Austin, Texas. Get this, a fourth bombing in less than a month. People now being told to stay in their homes until later this morning. The entire city. We're live with the breaking details overnight. Plus, millions of people across the nation live live with MS on a daily basis, including our very own Janice Dean. She's opening up about her battle with the disease and a brand new treatment. That story coming next.
The city of Austin, Texas, rocked by a fourth explosion in less than a month.
2 men were rushed to the hospital and neighbors told to stay indoors as police warned that this blast is different than the others.
All right, Rob Schmidt's been following this story. He has the latest because it's moving forward as the sun comes up.
Yeah,
hey, Rob.
And it's scary. Another one today. The fourth bomb to explode in Austin, Texas this month put 2 men in the hospital. The explosion came just hours after Austin police officials issued a surprising statement telling the bomber that the world is listening. If there is a message that this bomber wants to send, go ahead and say it. That was a surprising thing to hear. This fourth bomb was detonated not far from the first 3, but there are some key differences in this latest attack. Police say it appears that this bomb was left on the side of a road and instead of at somebody's doorstep. And this bomb may have been triggered by a tripwire, injuring 2 men who were biking through this Travis country neighborhood of southwest Austin. The Austin bombings have so far killed 2 people, a man in his 30s and a musically gifted teenager. 4 others have been injured. Police say the victims in the first 3 bombings were all black or Hispanic, leading them to consider the possibility that these attacks are racially motivated. A stern warning from police to anyone near the site of last night's bombing: stay inside until the sun comes up. And police have had a chance to secure the neighborhood and get a closer look at this latest attack, which did have a much different style.
And it is very possible that this device was a device that was activated by someone either handling, kicking, or coming in contact with a tripwire that activated the device. So that changes things.
All right, well, the men injured in this latest bombing, both in their 20s, are said to be in good condition, although they did suffer serious injuries. Hundreds of officers and federal agents are working this case, and there is a $115,000 reward for anybody that gives information that leads to the arrest. But if this is a completely different style bomb, of course there's concern now that this guy could be a very gifted ball maker and somebody that knows what he's doing.
It's one thing to walk out your door and see when they're on the stoop, and you know at this point not to touch it. But on the side of the road, I wouldn't even notice it probably if I'm driving.
Just looks like maybe something sitting there, and you ride over some kind of a tripwire and.
That reward has gone up too. Remember last week it was like 20,000 or something like that, and
115 grand. That should motivate somebody if anybody knows anything. Yeah.
435 leads.
It sounds like it's an IED alongside the road.
Right.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
So who knows what this guy can do? Yeah.
Right. All right, hey, Rob, you just had a habit. Do you mind tossing to Jillian? We're a little tired. Yeah. I mean,
do that.
You didn't do that before. I mean,
I've seen you do it about 1,000 times. So, hey, Jillian, now let's get some of the headlines.
Hey, Rob. Long time no see.
It's been about an hour and a half.
We co-anchor the 5 a.m. show, if you don't know that.
That's
Side note. But let's get you caught up on some of your headlines, guys, this morning, starting with this. Another missed warning. School officials wanted the Florida school shooting suspect committed more than a year before the massacre. Counselors and even the disgraced former deputy that failed to intervene in the shooting recommended that Nicholas Cruz undergo a mental evaluation, but the recommendation was never acted upon. That kind of involuntary commitment would have made it much more difficult for Cruz to legally purchase a gun. A driver wrestles free from a sheriff's deputy and makes a run for it. The chaotic moments caught on a dash cam in Georgia. Just look at this. You can see the guy hop in the car and drive off, throwing the deputy to the ground following a traffic stop. A nearby driver watching the scary scene, then following the suspect, helping police track him down. He was caught after a high-speed chase and arrested for drugs and assaulting a law enforcement officer. Scary scene there. One city is standing up to California's sanctuary status. Los Alamitos in Orange County will vote today on an ordinance to exempt itself from the new law. That limits cooperation with local law enforcement and immigration authorities. The ordinance claims the law is unconstitutional. Earlier this month, the Justice Department sued the state of California over its sanctuary laws. A soldier surprises his family at Dolly Parton's Stampede show. Sergeant Brian Samsel making his big entrance as his wife was at center stage playing a game. Oh my God. Sergeant Samsel's wife jumping into his arms, as you could see at the dinner show in Missouri. His son Axton literally jumping for joy in the stands. Look at that excitement. Sergeant Samsel spent the last year in the Middle East. Send it back to you guys.
That is great. All right. Thank you very much, Jillian.
Thank you.
Yep. Right.
Well, March is Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month, and more than 2.3 million people all over the world are living with MS, including our own Janice Dean, who was diagnosed in 2005.
And Janice is sharing the story of her journey with the disease in a brand new op-ed that is out today. And she joins us right now.
Yep. Hey, Janice.
How's it going?
Good. We knew about last week was a little bit challenging, but there's also something you wanted to tell us about that you wrote about.
Well, I felt it was important to share the journey because I was diagnosed 13 years ago, actually with you, Ainsley, over 10 years ago on the couch in the other studio. I talked about being diagnosed with MS. I struggled with that. A lot of people actually told me, don't tell your employer that you were diagnosed with this because it actually your career might go downhill. And I just wanted to be a reminder that that potentially isn't possible. I mean, I'm doing the job that I love. I work every single day. I have a beautiful family. I'm learning how to cook. And I wanted people to, take note that every case of MS is different. For me, I've been going down this road with relatively no bumps until very recently.
You got a call on a Friday night.
Right. So the way that they see that your MS is potentially exacerbated is when they look at your MRIs, magnetic resonance MRIs. I don't know the exact right MRI. So my doctor looks at that to see if there's lesions or swelling on my brain or my spine, and that's an indication that the illness is flaring up again. And that's what happened. And in this time, I had several new lesions on my spine, and I haven't had any lesions in a very long time.
And you weren't feeling great, right?
I was not feeling great, and I knew in my heart that there was something wrong. So I went, we got the MRIs done, and she called me on a Friday night, and it was my son Theodore's 7th birthday party, and we had friends over, and I had to leave, and basically the doctor told me, you have new lesions. We have to be more aggressive. Let's take you off the current drug that you're on, and let's try something a little different. And so I'm on something that is potentially more rigorous and potentially has more side effects, but we're hoping that the benefits are better than the side effect.
You walked us through it on Twitter last week, and you talked a little bit about it in the After the Show. That new treatment, how did it go?
It went fine. I think, just being scared and going. This one is an infusion. It's 2 hours. I go to the doctor's office, and I only do it once a month. The medication that I was on before that was once a day, an injection. So I went with my husband. There's my husband, Sean. And what I wanted to do was write about friends and what friends can do. Just one word of encouragement can mean so much to people who have a chronic illness. And for me, it was my friend Megan McCain, who was asking me about my treatment. And she said to me, Janice, can I come with you to the doctor's office and sit with you while you get your treatment? Sweet. And it's just a small thing like that that can make you feel loved. And you did that with me as well. And you guys too, Steve and Brian. Ainsley down the hall stopped me and said a prayer with me in the hallway, and that meant so much to me. And I've gotten so much love from coworkers here. And I think what it is MS Awareness Month, and I just want to make sure that people out there know that I am rooting for you as well, and I'm giving you a hug. That I live with this every day, and I have no idea what my journey is going to be like. It's going to be something I'm going to have for the rest of my life.
What is so unbelievable about this too? Is that one day you're great, you're 100%, there's nothing wrong, and the next day you can't get out of bed.
We still don't know. I mean, every day that I literally get out of bed and my legs work, I'm so grateful. But it is one of those diseases that we still don't know why it happens, and there is no cure.
Because we forget. Because we see you going 100 miles an hour.
But that's good. Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that people forget that I have this, but it's also a reminder that I do have a chronic illness. And so the op-ed that I wrote that's on foxnews.com is a love letter to my friends and my family and to all those that do suffer with something, that I am here and I understand your journey.
And you're going to have that's the title of the op-ed at foxnews.com. And you will know whether or not this new treatment, the infusion once a month, is working in a couple of months.
I think so, yeah. And then if that doesn't work, we try something else.
Okay. They say you start to feel better with this treatment after a few months,
I actually feel better even after this weekend.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Cross your fingers. Lots of love.
Also, I hear Montel is doing some great things.
Montel Williams, I love him. And that's why it's important for people like me and Montel and others that have a chronic illness.
Neil Cavuto.
And Neil Cavuto, my love. He was there for me day one. So we bring awareness to the illness, and we bring you support and love.
Well, we're all here for you. All of our viewers, they love you, and we're all praying for you. You're going to have a long, healthy life. You have those two boys.
I'm going to hold Brian's hand.
Make all the women jealous.
Okay. That's true.
You can read it on foxnews.com. Thanks, Janice.
How jealous all the women are of me?
We love you. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
We all fight over it.
Yeah, I know.
See, that's a little secret. That
off camera. That's the biggest story.
All right. It is 42 minutes after the top of the hour. Still ahead, Louis Farrakhan is known for his hate-filled comments. Listen. Well, he's known for his anti-Semitic and racist rhetoric, but instead of condemning faith leader Louis Farrakhan, some on the left are openly embracing him. Al Sharpton, Black Lives Matter, and the new Black Panther Party are set to hold a protest in our nation's capital today, defending a man who said this.
Here the Jews don't like Farrakhan, so they call me Hitler. Well, that's a good name. Hitler was a very great man. Your country has been taken from you by the synagogue of Satan, the satanic Jews. Because you see, white people deserve to die. White folks are going down.
This as a number of Democratic lawmakers come under fire for their ties to Farrakhan, including Minnesota Congressman and DNC co-chair Keith Ellison. He doubled down this weekend. He wrote, "This is a smear by factions on the right who want to pit the Jewish community and the black community against each other." Here to weigh in is the president of the Black Conservative Federation, Deontay Johnson. Thank you so much for being with us, Deontay.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. What was your response to Congressman Keith Ellison's article in the Medium?
Well, you know, it's so funny because, you know, Farrakhan has been celebrated in the Democrat community for far so long, and yet he's been saying these crazy statements. Now, let's go back. If President Trump would have made these comments, we would have had saying, black Republicans need to stand up against it. This is a shame. How do you support someone that talks like this? How do you support someone with this much hate? Farrakhan has been showing hate since he has started, and this is something that needs to be stopped, and it needs to be condemned.
Well, if you read the article, Congressman Ellison, he says it's not true, that he's not affiliated with Farrakhan, that they did cross paths a few times. He said no relationship to him. A decade ago, there was a brief chance encounter in D.C. He hasn't seen Farrakhan since 2013. But then the Indianapolis Star ran a story saying that Congressman Andrew Carson met with Farrakhan in 2015, a few years later after Ellison said he didn't meet with him. And then Farrakhan said that he had met with Carson and Ellison, that he had a meeting with both of them. So is he trying to have it both ways? Is he trying to separate himself now because he has more political aspirations in the future? Why do you think he's coming out saying he's not connected to him now?
Well, you know what, I say it like this. It's so funny because, you know, he said a lot in his article. I read the article. But you know what? He never yet condemned the actions of what he said. He never condemned anything that was said. And so as far as I'm concerned, he still agrees with it. But it goes back to the Charlottesville incident that he brought up, is that they wanted the president to call it how he saw it. They wanted the president to say what he saw, say what happened, and they wanted him to call out the alt-right. They wanted him to call out all of the white supremacists. But you know what? They're not doing the same thing. We have to stop this double standard. It has to stop.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the double standard. Congressman Danny Davis, Democrat from Illinois, he said that Farrakhan does outstanding work, but white people are not devils and Jewish people are not satanic. Now, if the shoe were on the other foot, if Republicans were in a situation like this, what would be the case? Is there hypocrisy there?
Oh, the Republicans would have gotten eaten alive. We would have been all over the news. Every news station would have picked it up. Every Black Lives Matter group would have been protesting. If President Trump would have said something like this, we could imagine what happened. Like I said, it's a double standard. And I think that the Democratic leaders of Congress, the Democrat Party needs to condemn these actions, and they need to stand up and be big men and women and be brave and point this. This is something that happens, and so they need to call it out.
Deontay, thanks for being with us. Great to see you this morning. Thank you. Still ahead, Jim Carrey sparking outrage with this painting of Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. And that's not all. He's also attacking her faith. Jim Carrey, the actor. Plus, should the rich pay more for speeding tickets? A New York Times op-ed is making a case for that. Stuart Varney calls this identity punishment. And he joins us next.
Hey, New York Times op-ed making the case for the wealthy to pay more in speeding fines, arguing the flat fine threatens poor people with financial ruin while letting rich people break the law without meaningful repercussions. Equity requires punishment that is equally felt.
But Stuart Varney calls this identity punishment and is a bad idea. And he joins us. Of course, he's going to do a show here in about an hour. So in other words, the richer you are, the more you should pay for a parking ticket.
A speeding ticket.
A speeding ticket.
That's what the op-ed says. Look, right now, we've got the principle established. You do this, you pay that fine. Okay? That's the firmly established principle in the United States. I'm all for it. What they want, or what they're proposing, is you do this, and the fine you pay depends on who you are.
Progressive.
How much money you've got. A bit like a tax. I think that's a very dangerous idea.
Is it based on how much money you make, or is it based on how nice your car is?
Well, they could be both, couldn't it? I mean, I can see the day coming if you had this kind of discriminatory fining procedure. I can see local authorities which want to bring in some more revenue picking on the person with the nice BMW or the Bentley. Oh, let's get him for something. Let's charge him with speeding. Why not?
Why don't you think women speed?
Oh, please, Brian.
I'm just saying.
You have to lay that one on me.
By the way, I have to take out a loan to pay off my red light camera tickets. Evidently, there's a discrepancy between what I think is yellow light and what the red light camera thinks is yellow light.
They should abolish them as well.
Buddy.
Well, wait a second. They've got this system of there's different fining levels. They've got this system in Finland.
Right.
And a few years ago, a wealthy executive for Nokia, you know, the Finnish organization, he was stopped for speeding. He was doing 45 in a 30 zone. He was driving a bright cherry red Harley Davidson. You know what they fined him? $103,000. Yes.
Wow.
That's what they do in Finland. Wealthy people pay a whole lot more than ordinary people. A hockey player in Finland was fined $39,000.
So, Stuart, does the New York Times want this particular kind of progressive fineage to happen here?
I don't think they want the Finnish model, so to speak, but what they do want is a progressive, progressive fining system, a bit like a progressive income tax.
Can I just tell you, there was a study showing who the happiest people are? It is the Finns. So they must be so happy. And they've been happy writing that $103,000 check.
Well, there's not many rich people.
Stuart Varney's going to be on television from 9 to noon. Most of it's going to be live.
All of it is live.
All of it's going to be live.
Except the commercials.
Except the commercials, of which we have many.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, straight ahead, President Trump's team making it clear Robert Mueller is not going to get canned. But will that be enough to satisfy the left? We're going to talk about that.
Plus, former UN Ambassador John Bolton, who's going to be here. Is he going to be joining the Trump administration?
He's going to be live.
Sean Hannity's going to be here live. And Second Lady Karen Pence?
Going to be live.
Wow.
I got 100 years.
Hey, New York Times op-ed making the case for the wealthy to pay more in speeding fines, arguing the flat fine threatens poor people with financial ruin while letting rich people break the law without meaningful repercussions. Equity requires punishment that is equally felt.
But Stuart Varney calls this identity punishment and is a bad idea. And he joins us. Of course, he's going to do a show here in about an hour. So in other words, the richer you are, the more you should pay for a parking ticket.
A speeding ticket.
A speeding ticket.
That's what the op-ed says. Look, right now, we've got the principle established. You do this, you pay that fine. Okay? That's the firmly established principle in the United States. I'm all for it. What they want, or what they're proposing is, you do this, and the fine you pay depends on who you are.
Progressive.
How much money you've got. A bit like a tax. I think that's a very dangerous idea.
Is it based on how much money you make, or is it based on how nice your car is?
Well, they could be both, couldn't it? I mean, I can see the day coming if you had this kind of discriminatory fining procedure. I can see local authorities which want to bring in some more revenue, picking on the person with the nice BMW or the Bentley. Oh, let's get him for something. Let's charge him with speeding. Why not?
Why don't you think women speed?
Oh, please, Brian.
I'm just saying.
You have to lay that one on me.
By the way, I have to take out a loan to pay off my red light camera tickets. Evidently, there's a discrepancy between what I think is yellow light and what the red light camera thinks is yellow light.
They should abolish them as well.
Buddy.
Well, wait a second. They've got this system of there's different fining levels. They've got this system in Finland.
Right.
And a few years ago, a wealthy executive for Nokia, you know, the Finnish organization, he was stopped for speeding. He was doing 45 in a 30 zone. He was driving a bright cherry red Harley Davidson. You know what they fined him? $103,000. Yes.
Wow.
That's what they do in Finland. Wealthy people pay a whole lot more than ordinary people. A hockey player in Finland was fined $39,000.
So, Stuart, does the New York Times want this particular kind of progressive fineage to happen here?
I don't think they want the Finnish model, so to speak, but what they do want is a progressive, progressive fining system, a bit like a progressive income tax.
Can I just tell you, there was a study showing who the happiest people are? It is the Finns. So they must be so happy. And they've been happy writing that $103,000 check.
Well, there's not many rich people.
Stuart Varney's going to be on television from 9 to noon. Most of it's going to be live.
All of it is live.
All of it's going to be live.
Except the commercials.
Except the commercials, of which we have many.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, straight ahead, President Trump's team making it clear Robert Mueller is not going to get canned. But will that be enough to satisfy the left? We're going to talk about that.
Plus, former UN Ambassador John Bolton, who's going to be here. Is he going to be joining the Trump administration?
He's going to be live.
Sean Hannity's going to be here
live.
And Second Lady Karen Pence?
Going to be live.
Wow.
I got 100 years.